Welcome to Critical Junction, episode 22. I'm Mark.
I'm Luke.
I'm Jill.
So with Houston underwater thanks to Tropical Storm Harvey and wildfires raging in both LA and BC, we thought this would be a good opportunity to talk about climate change, or more specifically, climate change denial. So for the record, I just want to put it out there that there is no debate about this. The science is pretty much settled, or as the UN Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change puts it, scientific evidence for warming of the climate system is unequivocal. In fact, 97% of climate scientists agree that climate warming trends over the past century are very likely due to human activities, and most of the leading scientific organizations worldwide have issued public statements endorsing that position. So, let's start. But despite all of that, we still have people who are claiming that climate change is a quote-unquote hoax perpetrated by China, or some kind of other global conspiracy, God knows to what end.
Big science.
Big science. So let's start with that. Opening thoughts on the issue.
Well, maybe we should elaborate on what is global warming or climate change and how it works, or what are the specifics?
Sure. Did you want to start there?
Yeah. I can't go super in detail with this because I'm not an expert. I'm not a climatologist.
Well, what the fuck you doing here, man?
Yeah, exactly. I'm here to talk out my butt.
It's what we do. It's what we do, people.
And maybe along the way try and cite a few things that
more or less reliable sources.
Support the intuitions of my butt.
The intuitions of butt.
So, so global warming is about it's about the greenhouse gas effect mainly that's caused in some part by natural processes and also in other parts by contribution from human activity, specifically industrial activity that picked up in the mid 19th century.
Right. So when we're talking about climate change here, we're talking not just about changes, natural changes in the Earth's climate, but more specifically about human-caused climate change.
Right. Are they able to separate now? Because that was always the argument, right? That the climate changes anyways, and these fluctuations are extreme anyways.
So people that are actually studying the data and have expertise in climatology, they all agree that human activity is, to more than 97% of them, do agree that human activity does contribute to global warming.
Yeah, there's a 95% probability that the causes of the current spike in CO2 emissions are due specifically to human activity.
Wow.
Yeah. So like I said at the beginning, at the top of the episode, there is no debate about this. 97% of climate scientists are in agreement that we are fucking our planet.
Yeah, there's no debate among people who are in a position to know anything about it.
Right. The only debate
but the only debate that you do get is people who don't know shit about it but have a political or economic interest in denying it.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So do we want to start there? Let's talk about the economic impacts of climate change.
Mm-hmm. That's an interesting thing.
Well, and it's also considered the number one threat to public security at this point, is it not?
That too. Yeah, people actually laugh at anyone. Certain people laugh at anyone who brings up climate change as affecting trends in terrorism and radicalization and stuff like that. And there are, it's a nuanced kind of phenomenon there, but even climate deniers have used things like the warm period in Rome and the cooling that happened there, and the correlation between the cooling that happened in Rome and the decline of the empire over there. Mm-hmm. I've heard even deniers suggesting that there was a causal relationship there because it got cooler in Rome. that's why the empire declined, because it affected crops and so
they got chili.
It's not like they don't. It's not like they can't understand the concept, right?
The Romans got chili though. They didn't like that.
Yeah, the Romans got chili. No, but because the crop yields diminished, health declined and made people more susceptible to things like the plague and
In terms of the economic impact, let's take Hurricane Harvey as an example. Some people are predicting that it will be the most expensive natural disaster in the U.S. history, costing, they're saying, at upwards of $190 billion.
So it's surpassing Katrina.
It's surpassing Katrina.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So like
and they don't even have the whole story of like the levees and shit.
Right. Yeah. No. They're like, we're just at the beginning of this. It's going to take years for them to piece everything together, including, like you said, the levee thing. But like that alone, that should be incentive for politicians to take action on this issue. But for some reason, let Trump, for example, just a few weeks before Harvey hit, got rid of a bunch of Obama-era natural disaster protection clauses, which a lot of people cried foul about with good reason, because now, Texas or Houston specifically is fucking underwater.
Yeah.
Right? So there is, like I said, a definite political incentive for politicians to take action on the issue of climate change. But for whatever reason, they're not. They're pandering to the deniers. They're pandering to, well, Luke, you would like this, to capitalist interests.
Yeah.
So if you want to take a moment to rage against capitalism, that would be a good time.
No, I saw an interview with David Suzuki, in which he tried to talk to a CEO of the tar sands, and he wanted to ask him, what do you think? First off, what do you think a human being needs? And the guy's going, money. Good job. David Suzuki. Air. Water.
Whoa.
And so basically David Suzuki's realizing
air, water, food, shelter.
The mind frame isn't there for them to even understand how to possibly approach things. They're not framing their minds to understand that they're part of the microcosm. Like, they think they've exited the system here. You exit the food chain and now we're on top of things. And it's not the case. We function along with everything else. From what I understand, according to a documentary that I saw on TVO, on trees, the botanists are saying, well, I'm saying the botanists in this documentary, if the boreal forest goes down, because it is now the main filter for the air on Earth.
And Canada owns most of the...
It's Canada and Russia mostly, it seems, really.
And Russia has mostly Siberian tundra and shit. They don't actually have as much of a forest as Canada does. Canada is the biggest.
Is it of the boreal forest?
Yeah, we have admittedly the largest CO2 filter left on the planet.
And if it goes down, that's it. There's no more clean air. What is it, CO2 or carbon monoxide or whatever in the air, and we will not be able to breathe without.
Yeah. Doesn't the sea do a big part of it too, and sea plants?
And that's one of the main reasons for the increase in ocean acidification, is because it can't cope with the amount of CO2 and other greenhouse gases that we're pumping into the atmosphere.
Right.
It's killing coral reefs. It's destroying ocean life.
Right. Well, I mean,
I think it's shifted 3% already.
Yeah. Are you talking about the sea level rise or just the acidification?
The acidification.
Right. Yeah, it's something like that. It's also causing migratory patterns of sea creatures to shift unpredictably. Right. Well, it's ridiculous the amount of impact that we're having on the planet, and we can't seem to grasp the fact that we're not, like you said, Luke, separate from the problem. We're inherently part of it. Right.
So one thing I find rather silly is that a big part of the denialist argument is that why should we upheave our economic systems for this potential problem? whereas the fact is the changes in the climate are causing economic impacts. So why shouldn't we react to protecting our economic system?
Right. Well, that leads me to an interesting point. A couple of scientists recently did a study where they examined the impact of political ideology on things like climate change denial. And they found that there is a direct correlation between right-wing authoritarianism and social dominance orientation with climate change deniers. So people who are more of a right-wing persuasion are more likely to deny climate change because it would have a negative impact on the socioeconomic status quo. Right? So they don't want to push the idea of climate change because it'll fuck up the economy and blah blah blah, right? So
but the ironic thing is that climate change is having economic impacts, and they don't want to take advantage. And a lot of the policy-minded people who are understanding climate change, they're proposing to take advantage of new technologies, renewable technologies, to react to climate change by actually bolstering our economy with new industries related to renewables and stuff. So it seems like it's not so much about protecting the economy or worrying about the economy. It's more about worrying about a specific industry in the economy,
right? Yeah,
which is fossil fuels.
Fossil fuels and natural gas, right?
Yeah.
But that's a good point. So let's take the example of the Ontario Feed-in Tariff Program, which was initially designed to be, this great green technology solution to that problem that you just pointed out. The issue is it became too politicized. It became a pivot point for Kathleen Wynne's Liberal government, and it eventually just kind of fell apart. The original intent was to reward people who adopted green technologies by paying them a dividend on the amount of electricity they produced using these green technologies. Eventually, they started reducing the rates to something that would no longer be profitable to people who had installed all these green tech solutions on their homes or businesses or whatever. And people started losing money on it, they started blaming the government, and the whole thing just collapsed. So that leads me to the question of whether or not these things should be politicized. My answer is obviously no. It shouldn't be used as a tool for any government. It should, we need these solutions in place not because it's a political tool, but because we need to save the fucking planet, right? This is the only planet that we know of that can sustain human life within reach. We can't go anywhere if we fuck it up. Not with today's technology. Not until we figure out a way to colonize Mars, for example, or develop interstellar travel to one of these exoplanets.
I guess they just think we'll fix it, no problem. We've adapted so far. We'll just continue adapting.
Well, their basis is that there's no problem to fix, really. It all fixes itself.
I do feel that is shifting now, because it is becoming, basically, it's becoming undeniable. The population is turning around.
I don't think it necessarily is. I think they're looking at everything in short-term anecdotal kind of ways. So when there's a big storm like Harvey, they just say that storms happen.
Right.
It's not climate change. Storms happen.
Well, that's a big thing in the climate deniers camp, is that the human brain is not wired for that type of long-term thinking, right? And also the fact that something called optimism bias tends to think that in the short term everything's rosy, right? Floods like Harvey can't happen here. Katrina can't happen
until something happens directly to you.
Right.
There's no problem.
Right. Exactly. And that's one of the reasons why we're not adopting these long-term solutions, is because we're thinking short-term. We're thinking short-term economic gain. We're thinking not in terms of long-term down the road solutions to this epic problem. Yeah.
I mean, So Scott Pruitt, this guy who's leading the EPA now, he's basically been put into the EPA to completely tear out all of its teeth,
Right.
and make it irrelevant so that it can eventually be shut down.
Are we talking about like what's that movie? Quit Smoking something?
Oh, Thank You for Smoking.
Thank You for Smoking.
Yeah. I mean,
Immediately I bring it around to a movie.
yeah. So well, I mean that's another angle on this. So Thank You for Smoking is about a shill for the smoking industry who's out there to misinform and hide information about the health effects of smoking, right? And to put out misinformation that contradicts the scientific data that proves the link to cancer.
Like a staller for.
Well, he's basically just a PR guy that's out there to deny, lie, to put the smoking industry in the best light possible. And the ironic thing is that the fossil fuel industry has used the same strategy,
right?
But they've also used the exact same people since the 50s. So the cigarette industry, that thing is sort of played out a lot earlier than the oil and gas industry and the climate change issue, but they've been happening concurrently, and they started around the same time. The same people have been used to put out garbage studies that contradict the actual science that's out there and peer reviewed, and often they just use sort of like alternate.
They cherry pick their data to support their wrong thesis.
Yeah. I mean, should we name some names here?
Bill, Fred, Mary, Louise.
Not those names. So you're talking about the actual PR firm that was responsible for this?
Yeah.
It was Hill and Knowlton.
Hill and Knowlton. There we go. Yeah.
Yeah.
So they're the PR firm that was hired by both industries back in the 50s, and they've been
not to disparage Hill and Knowlton. I know some people who actually work there.
Hill and Knowlton, if you guys want to call and sponsor the show.
If you want to.
Can I ask a question though? So with the scientist consensus, so we being a world that likes our specialists and people that know what they're talking about, what's this 3% that doesn't agree? Like, are they just the payoff? Payoffs.
I mean, that's mostly the
it's the religious scientists. Some of them think that God will fix the problem, so let's not.
Certainly will.
Remember, I emailed you an article about a guy who had literally gone to university specifically to be able to use his degree and then talk about shit that his degree wasn't about.
Right.
But using his credential to bolster his credibility for his
was it MIT or Harvard he went to?
I think this was about I think it was Harvard.
Right.
And it was about evolution that the guy wanted. I can't remember the guy's name, but he had admitted himself.
Right.
That this was like a plan.
Yeah.
Basically.
It was a massive troll, essentially.
Yeah. He was gonna go and swallow his pride and learn shit, but also have his fingers firmly planted in his ears the whole time, so that he could compartmentalize everything he learned during his degree at Harvard. To get the piece of paper, but then to be able to come out of it and then just put all of that in a drawer and lock it, and then just shill for his political allies and deny evolution and start talking shit about creationism and intelligent design.
So something else that David Suzuki brought up is that he feels that he has to remember that these aren't bad people.
Mm-hmm.
These are people that have gotten tangled up in things that they think, like oil company tycoons. These guys, do we still call them that? Are they still tycoons?
Yeah, moguls, tycoons,
Bigwigs.
fat cats.
They're just not, they're not thinking in terms of that. They don't even understand,
Right.
Like they're, I don't know what they are. Like they're mutants kind of thing. Like we're talking about.
Well, like if you go to like the basic psychology of all of us, there's things about the whole climate science, climate change issue that are just kind of prone to being or not accepted, not understood well.
Like mistaking weather for climate.
That kind of thing. I mean, there's a lot of little nuances in there that if you just hide the nuances, then you can just play up the what do you call it, the intuitive, the surface kind
like
of.
that asshole who stood up in front of the U.S. Congress holding a snowball.
Oh yeah.
If there's
global warming, how the hell can I have a snowball here on the floor?
My favorite was someone believing that solar powers will use up all the sun's power.
Yeah, or that.
that was the best.
The wind turbine
Wind
one. It'll
turbine.
use
What?
up all the wind.
We're gonna suck up all the wind. What happens when we run out of wind? Yeah.
I mean, the funny, like, so we know psychologically also that fear-based arguments tend to produce more of a backfire effect. So there's an interest on the part of the related industries to classify any information about risks and likely adverse effects of climate change. They have an interest in making any discussion of adverse effects sound like alarmism, quote unquote, or fear mongering. Because they know that as soon as you make it sound like fear-mongering, then people are going to dig in their heels and are going to be able to discount it, and you can breed some apathy that way so that they can continue operating unfettered.
Right, and the way to counter that would be, in the example of Tesla, would be to make adopting green technologies or alternative fuel systems sexy.
Yeah.
Something that would appeal to the human brain's reward center.
Right, this is what I've realized about us processing new information, is that we need to accept it first. Like, I'm thinking of the Big Bang Theory. The first time it's proposed, it's by a priest scientist guy. And he's going up to Albert Einstein in the park going, check this out. And Albert Einstein's all like, but good math, dude, but what the fuck's up with your philosophy? You know what I mean? Like a Big Bang, oh yeah? Really? You think so? Oh yeah. And what? Then it's like, how many years later, some guys playing around with some equipment find radiation, and they're going, what's all this radiation? And they're actually annoyed with it, and they're like, can we get rid of this? And then they make the tie-in, and only then does Albert Einstein come around going, this priest guy, where's this priest guy now, kind of thing, And so we need to accept it, like even when the math is there. So I don't really understand that. How is it possible that Albert Einstein went, great math, but this doesn't make any sense? I don't really understand.
So I think you could have been leading there. Actually, it's that facts aren't as compelling as emotion-based appeals.
Yeah.
It's totally sad and pathetic because facts should be what reigns. But no, apparently facts and just like fear-mongering, facts lead to backfire effect and lead to people digging in their heels and just saying, I've got some alternative facts over here or whatever.
One of my classes, one of my classes in college was called Principles of Persuasion, and we were told specifically that facts will not appeal to a broad audience. We need to go based on emotion. We need to go based on pretty much every logical fallacy you can come up with, right? You need to appeal to authority, the bandwagon effect, all of that. So I was sitting there thinking, like, this is totally counterintuitive to my natural way of thinking, right? Like, I have to abandon facts and appeal to emotion. What the fuck is this?
Right.
But
First lesson: forget everything you know.
Right. But yeah, like appealing to emotion will have a wider impact than if you were to just throw a bunch of facts at people. And politicians, especially of the climate denial persuasion, are banking on that by, like you said, Jill, playing to the fear aspect, right? And the way to counter that would be to start rewarding people for adopting these technologies, making green technologies sexy, making it something that people want to be a part of as social status.
So I know one place had done a study, one university, I can't remember where. They had done a study over like a full year or two with students where they gave them sort of energy use monitors in their apartment, so they knew exactly what appliances and what things in their apartment were using how much electricity. And then they would get weekly reports by email, which would either tell them how much money they're saving, or it would tell them what kind of environmental and health benefits or impacts this kind of energy savings can have. And apparently they were more motivated by the sort of I guess you could say the more soft emotional boost from being environmental saviors and health wise. That actually was more of a motivator than the hard money kind of approach or telling them exactly how much money they were saving.
Do you think that's in part due to generational differences? Like, do you think the younger generation is more motivated by those factors than...
It could be. I mean, with a study like that, the people who were studied were actual college-aged students.
Right.
I think it was actually even...
Well, they're also motivated by just being born into a world and going like, holy fuck, these adults, they really fuck shit up, kind of thing, you know? Like, is that not what they're facing? Like, it seems to me it's pretty obvious in the media and stuff like that.
I mean, rebellion has always been a thing, but it seems like young people are less educated about the function and value of institutions and longer term sort of structures of education and I guess even just plain logistics and administration and stuff. Like, everything is all about like being anti-establishment. It's like there's a big trend now that goes beyond our more conventional idea of teenage rebellion or youthful rebellion, where now that kind of there's a term for it, but I can't remember. It's like disaster or something or other, where it's all about completely destroying everything in the system, so that like a phoenix society can rebuild itself in a more optimal way or something like that.
Which is what populist candidates are totally banking on.
Yeah, what a lot of people who supported Trump have said that was their motivation.
Right. Well, he's outside the establishment, and that's exactly
the people
what
who aren't actually thinking of Trump as their god,
right,
and savior. Those who aren't that, but also voted for Trump anyway, a lot of them are saying, we voted for Trump because we know he's a chaotic candidate that's going to tear down the establishment.
Right.
Right. These are the people that know it's okay to run in the street, but then they actually do go out and run into the street naked. I got the analogy wrong, sort of thing.
Yeah.
Like, to know you can.
And they're having a ball, and their head is as big as a house, and their ego is doing great right up until they get hit by the truck.
Right.
Yeah.
Man. Okay, so.
Damn.
I found a website where they list every possible climate change denial argument and then counter it with with facts.
Oh yeah.
What's the website?
Hold on a second. It's called skepticalscience.com.
Okay.
So I was wondering if you guys want to go through the top 10 and debunk them.
I would love to hear this. Yes.
Alrighty. So.
Drum roll, please.
Number 10. Is Antarctica losing or gaining ice? So, let's start there. The myth on the climate denial side would be that Antarctica is gaining ice. As we know, satellites measure Antarctica as gaining sea ice, but losing land ice at an accelerating rate, which has implications for the sea level rising. Right? So that's that one. Antarctica may be losing, what was it? Yeah. It's gaining sea ice, but losing land ice.
Okay.
So that's
well, I mean that naturally when ice shelves break off, they go into the sea.
Right.
So now the sea suddenly has more.
Exactly.
Has more sea ice because an ice shelf coming off of a land-based sheet of ice, an ice shelf would, even though it's hanging over the ocean, would not be considered sea ice, right?
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
So there you go. Number 9.
Okay, so simple logic kind of takes care of the first one. Number 9?
Number 9. It hasn't warmed since 1998.
Oh, man.
In fact, every part of the Earth's climate system has continued warming since 98, with 2015 shattering temperature records. So that one is just complete bullshit.
Yeah. So you know how when you look at when you're looking at a chart that's sort of charting a trend line, right? Your trend line is rarely a laser straight line.
There will be dips and there will be peaks.
There will be dips and peaks, but the trend line is still evident given a multi-decadal view, right?
So one year might be a little cooler, one might be a little warmer, but the trend line itself is on a constant rise.
The thing that they're doing here is in '98 there was a particularly warm year globally, and so that was a warm spike. So they take advantage of that warm spike by placing the start of their view, their look at the data, and then you can see sort of a plateau,
right?
If you just go from there to the following decade.
Look at the whole trend, people. Take the whole graph into consideration.
Yeah.
Okay, where were we here? Number 8. Animals and plants can adapt. This coral, trees, birds, mammals, and butterflies are adapting well to routine reality of
really
change.
Adapting.
Oh yeah, for sure. So yeah, that's the myth. In fact, what science says is that a large number of ancient mass extinction events have been strongly linked to global climate change. Because current climate change is so rapid, the way species typically adapt, such as migration, is in most cases simply not possible. Global change is simply too pervasive and occurring too rapidly.
Yeah, you can't get much more too pervasive than global.
Right.
There's no way to go. There's nowhere to go.
There is nowhere to go. Number 7. The temperature record is unreliable. Really.
Yeah. There's so much that they're looking at. They're getting temperature recordings from so many different types of source. They're looking at tree rings, they're looking at ice core samples, they're looking at actual thermometer readings.
Yeah, what's this person think reliable even means? That statement's not reliable.
It seems like a lot of it just comes down to bare assertions of denial.
Well, yeah, I read another article, but just the headline itself is enough to... I didn't bother reading the rest of it because I just caught on the headline, but, climate change deniers have zero scientific credibility.
Oh, great.
That's all I need to know. Because they
it's
don't.
It's like a baby going, no.
Stop your foot. No.
Number 6. The models are unreliable. Not like supermodels or anything, but
honestly,
the models are something
unreliable.
Completely separate and different from the actual recording and the data that shows the warming. The models are about what could happen in the future, given what we know about physics and cause and effect, and it's calculated out based on probability.
Yeah,
it's not just a high-minded conjecture there.
This is one of those complexity things, right?
Yeah.
Mathematical models that are supposed to be representative of the Earth's climate are fucking complicated.
Yeah.
Right? So, of course, they're going to see, unless you understand the math behind it, which I don't, and a lot of people also won't. It's going to seem like it's not reliable because you don't get it. But what science says is that the model successfully reproduced temperatures since the 1900s globally by land, air, and the ocean. So they are reliable.
Yeah.
And it turns out, even if we did understand the math, we still wouldn't believe. Like, I'm thinking of the Albert Einstein thing.
Yeah, right.
It's just not enough to believe. To sort of click our brain into, I guess, action. Like, I mean, the stuff you were talking about earlier about implementing rewards and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I mean, we're dealing with a human species and a government somewhat like that species from Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. You know what I mean? It's such a slow bureaucratic process. Like, this is never going to do anything. You know what I mean? Like, it seems to me, as scientists are already saying, it's too late. Like, what's the agreement on that? It's pretty high. Yeah. It seems.
Yeah.
I don't know what the percentage is there. That we've already passed the tipping point. Like, we have killed ourselves, kind of thing. I mean, there's a certain element of adaptation and stuff like that, but really it's a killing off of life, like a major killing. Like, we've commit suicide, sort of.
Yeah, but I mean, there's all kinds of wiggle room there with like too late for what, really? Do we not still have opportunity to mitigate certain effects, or at least to set up systems to avoid some of the effects of climate change? I don't know. I think if you play up the idea that it's too late, like whether we're at a point of no return for a certain
I wasn't trying
global
to play that up. I'm just like a depressed asshole kind of thing.
Yeah. No, but what I'm saying
really
is
extreme in the way that.
If you go there, then you trigger the fear.
It's true. The
fear backlash.
Right. So what?
And the fear mongering accusations.
What sort of?
Whether or not it's true.
You were talking about appealing to, like, I'm trying to think of how to possibly. Oh, we didn't finish the list though, did we?
No.
No.
That was number 6.
We should get back to the list, but I was thinking, what is the thing that can get the person to change? Like, what can create the biggest change?
Well,
like, it seems to me.
What I was saying is that there was some data to suggest certain strategies or certain types of incentive do work, like appealing to people's like environmental and
it's also appealing to people's vanity.
System.
Like,
yeah,
if you
model, appealing to people's vanity. It's all that lifestyle.
Yes, exactly.
That lifestyle marketing, right? That started in the 60s.
Like Tesla, for example. Like identifying the Tesla as something huge and innovative and worthy of being owned as a status symbol. That kind of thing eventually will catch on, and people will be like, well, I don't want a gas guzzling BMW. I want these things.
It's funny when it's too good, though. It freaks people out. No, that's that change is too awesome. We can't possibly deal with that. You know,
Right.
Like, people were afraid of Tesla. You know.
Yeah.
Craziness.
Yeah. Okay, number 5.
Number 5.
Number 5.
Well, I'll just read the whole myth. Global warming has stopped and a cooling is beginning. No climate model has predicted a cooling of the Earth. Quite the contrary, and this means that the projections of future climate are unreliable. Wrong. Completely wrong. All the indicators show that global warming is still happening, and this goes back to the trend line that we were just talking about. There may be occasional dips and spikes, but the overall trend is that, it is...
It's only just begun, kind of thing.
Well, it began with the Industrial Revolution. But
Yeah. I mean, the effects of it. Like,
the effects are just starting to be seen.
Yeah.
Yeah, like, we're seeing that with all these extreme weather patterns, like the hurricane, like the wildfires that are going on. Like, these types of events, these types of extreme weather events will increase if we don't do anything to mitigate the damage now. Yeah, exactly. The frequency will increase.
And the severity of them.
Frequency and severity. It'll just keep going up and up unless we start acting now, or last year, or the year before, if we can invent time travel. Like the 2-degree Celsius benchmark that they came up with in the Paris Accord, that's just the beginning. Like, that's an idealist, lofty goal, but it's somewhere to start. And, like, I think we need to do more. We definitely need to do more. Otherwise, we're just going to keep drowning people.
Reacting to shit like idiots.
Yeah.
Like, why can't we plan? And why does planning have to be reduced to fear mongering?
Right.
Like What are these people afraid of that they have to smear any wiser approach to infrastructure planning and stuff?
Yeah.
They have to smear that as alarmism.
It's like that comic that's been going around. The like, what if we end up creating a better world for nothing?
I love it. What better reason?
The humanity.
What have we done?
Oh my God! We created a better world for nothing.
That's hilarious.
Number 4, there is no consensus. I think we've already discussed this one ad nauseum.
Yes.
Do we want to address more of it, or should we move on
No,
past the 97%?
it's easily verifiable. It's like if you just look through the reputable journals that actually have actual peer review, then 97% or more is in agreement. So there's no argument there.
Number 3, this is one of my favorites. It's not a bad thing. You know, CO2 is plant food.
Oh, great. Let me hear how they respond to that one.
So, the myth, 2,000 years of published human history say that warm periods were good for people. It was the harsh, unstable Dark Ages and Little Ice Age that brought bigger storms, ultimately frost, widespread famine, and plagues of disease. No. Negative impacts of global warming on agriculture, health, and the environment far outweigh any positives. So the whole CO2 is plant food bullshit, right? That one just that gets me for some reason.
Well, not to mention that there's a lot of variables, right, in climate science, and there's feedback loops that are built into the ecosystem. So with global warming, you get a bunch of different effects. Let's say you get an evening out of the climates, right? So whereas you had some bigger extremes in some stabler climates where it was very warm for a while in one place and very cold in another place, and then the range there actually narrows, and it gets cooler in the warm place and warmer in the cool place.
Right.
Then you're basically just eliminating a lot of vegetation that exists in either of these extremes, but that are native and dependent on the conditions in those specific climates, right? The other thing is things like ice cap melting. What ends up happening is the ice caps, they create like this white shield that causes a lot of sunlight to be reflected back into space. And as the ice caps disappear, what you get now is just dark ocean surface that just absorbs the sunlight coming in, and so that just creates another feedback loop that means it gets even warmer faster.
Yeah, it's self-propagating.
That's it.
Just to address the CO2 argument specifically, I'm going to quote from the counter argument. While CO2 is essential for plant growth, all agriculture depends also on steady water supplies, and climate change is likely to disrupt those supplies through floods and droughts. So pretty self-explanatory, right?
Yeah.
Like the more you increase CO2, the more you're increasing the greenhouse gas effect, which in itself will cause greater droughts, will erode, the ability for farms to
Appeal to my feelings now. Go on.
Nope.
And I find there's a little bit of an intuitive naturalistic fallacy aspect to that argument, that CO2 exists in the environment and the ecosystem actually has plants and stuff that need CO2 to live and produce oxygen. They're saying that CO2 is automatically good because it's natural, but at the same time, like if you seal up your house and fill your house with CO2, like it'll kill you. It is still a poison even though it's natural, right?
Yeah.
Just like cyanide is naturally occurring, but you don't want to
Eat your apples, people.
You don't want to eat a bunch of cyanide, right?
Mercury is naturally occurring. You don't want to ingest a bunch of mercury.
Hey!
In fact, there's no such thing as natural. If it wasn't natural, it just wouldn't exist.
Natural doesn't mean good.
Right, natural doesn't necessarily mean good. Number 2, it's the sun. So, the myth, Over the past few hundred years, there's been a steady increase in the numbers of sunspots at the time when the Earth has been getting warmer. The data suggests solar activity is influencing the global climate, causing the world to get warmer. So, what science actually says, the sun's energy has decreased since the 1980s, but the Earth keeps getting warmer faster.
Yeah.
Why
So there
has
you
the
go.
sun's energy decreased?
For 40
How do you know
years,
Yeah.
you've got data contradicting that
Does-
talking point.
Does the
So-
sun's energy sort of... I mean, I thought the sun's energy was growing in general. Is it not?
So
And it
technically,
sort of fluctuates? Like it
yeah,
throbs
fluctuates,
sort of thing?
but just by virtue of the sun giving off solar radiation, it's like it's
Oh, okay.
burning fuel, right? So
Right.
eventually, it's negligible, but it's still detectable.
I see.
There's a trend line that shows, the energy output of the sun kind of dipping.
I see.
However, the opposite is happening on Earth, where
Yeah.
the planet is warming while the sun is getting slightly cooler.
Right.
That's just science.
Yeah.
Shall we go for number one?
Once again, logic.
And
people.
number one,
Number one, the climate has changed before. So to quote from the myth, climate is always changing. We've had ice ages and warmer periods when alligators were found in Spitsbergen. I don't know where that is. Ice ages have occurred in 100,000 years cycles for the last 700,000 years, and there have been previous periods that appear to have been warmer than the present despite CO2 levels being lower than they are now. Most recently, we've had the medieval warm period and the Little Ice Age. So, in fact, greenhouse gases, principally CO2, have controlled most ancient climate changes. This time, humans are the cause, mainly by our CO2 emissions. So it's not the fact that the Earth goes through periods of change. That's a given. It's the fact, again, like we mentioned in the beginning of the episode, that we're having a direct impact on just how quickly we're putting CO2 into the atmosphere. Right? There's a spike. There's a noticeable spike in just the sheer amount of CO2 and other greenhouse gas emissions.
the hockey stick from An Inconvenient Truth.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. It's there. Like, you can measure this shit.
Yeah.
So those are the top 10 arguments and their
Yeah.
counter arguments.
Another one that I've heard a lot is, really sadly, the one where they point to this media article from the 70s about a little ice age coming, or potentially coming, and there was, in fact, no consensus on global cooling in the 70s. This one article had been already establishing for a good 20 years since the 50s that global warming was actually what the data was showing.
Right.
So, yeah,
So there you have it.
there you have it.
Science. It works.
It works, bitches.
One of my favorite Richard Dawkins quotes.
Yeah.
All right.
You know,
So what can be done? What can be done to convince climate deniers that they're wrong? In your opinion?
To me, it seems to be about the reframing of the mind, right? Like approaching the world with a different model, of how things work and what things are.
what do you mean? I mean, we talked about how facts and data aren't persuasive or aren't compelling.
Right.
On
So
on
the appeal to the feel is what
Yeah.
we're talking about. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
But we'd then have to create a model and put it out there and sell it, sort of thing.
Yeah,
a
right.
model of a different way of looking at it. Like I'm thinking of Aboriginal peoples. I don't know what to call them, honestly. There's so many different names and stuff like that. But you know what I'm talking
First
about.
Nations.
First Nations
yeah.
people. And they're identifying with nature as being the mother source and the feeder of life and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Like they're not speaking in terms of symbols, like they're not speaking symbolically. This is something that David Suzuki once again talked about, kind of thing. They're speaking literally, like they mean it. Like this is the source of our life, kind of thing.
Right, right.
Like, we are part of this.
Yeah.
And we're not outside of it. Like we're not
It's
sitting on top of it,
philosophical,
controlling it.
cultural sort of worldview that's being.
Well, it seems to me, we've been talking about people that just look at a little bit of something and go, that's the whole thing right there.
Yeah.
Look at this. That's my argument, kind
Yeah.
of thing, you know. And it's nothing. It's just a little bit of something.
More the confirmation bias if something actually, if you can be presented with a talking point that supports your preconceived allegiances to I don't know, right-wing capitalism, then you're going to believe it, and you're gonna deny anything that doesn't.
It doesn't fit into your look, what
Yeah.
you're looking at.
Yeah.
That's not where I was looking. Sorry, that's
Yeah,
your
sorry.
world.
Yeah,
Sorry.
that's your world. I wasn't
That's
looking
not
there.
mine. I wasn't looking there.
I was looking at this stupid little article in 1970.
Right.
You know, I find this whole subject, it's just sad. Like,
Yeah.
in fact, I woke up this morning, and I'm sorry if I'm a little bit quiet on this one and I'm cracking jokes and stuff like that, but really, I kind of started crying a little bit. You
Oh
know
my
what I mean?
God.
Like, it's sad, fuck, what we've done. Like, it's terrible, you know?
Yeah.
And we're really, I think, or it feels like, in my mind, just starting to grasp it.
Mm-hmm.
We're just starting to see that, oh, like, we really fucked shit up here, you know?
Yeah.
And it's going to be really fucking hard to change.
The degree to which we've fucked things up will only become more and more apparent as we go along, right?
Well, supposedly they're just starting to now understand what the deforestation in the 50s and all that stuff is really doing. Like, all the water is going bad, and it seems like a lot of the...
The huge coral reefs are just bleached and disappearing.
in Japan, they basically have... all they have is concrete left, sort of thing. So there's basically... They're trying to plant micro gardens in schoolyards because that was basically the only land left.
Right.
And so they're building these micro forests and stuff like that, you know, to just try and filter the air and help things out.
And in other industries, you've got things like urban agriculture that is coming up that would actually have some beneficial effects there, where you wouldn't get these heat islands or urban. I think it's called a heat island, where urban centers are known to create a lot of extra warming because you get rid of all the vegetation there as the sprawl happens, and then you get a lot of more concrete and asphalt that just absorbs the heat, and energy use too that just creates heat, right? So by creating these sort of urban agriculture systems where rooftops are covered in greenery and yards are producing their own food, then you're getting green into the urban circle, and you're reducing the need for rural industry, which also has its own effect on climate, right? So you've got like many different avenues to start mitigating.
Doesn't it still seem like just a pittance of help? You know what I mean? Like, I mean, not to discourage.
Well, it's
Once again, I say
incremental.
super depressing things, kind of like there seems to be no point, guys. You know, we're still fucked, eh? But it really does just seem to be such a small thing. I mean, it's great and all. And we were talking about in the car on the car ride over the no waste movement and how
Zero waste.
Yeah, zero waste. Yeah, sorry. Because we have a friend who manages to basically, she showed me a little container. Here's my waste for the year, and she has it in a little mason jar. You know what I mean? So she puts in the effort to go out there
and she buys everything without packaging.
So shout out to Brittany. You know?
Yeah. But I mean, this when you hear of people like this, it kind of spreads. You're creating culture as you interact, right? And so like us knowing Brittany, we've already started taking steps, like in my home, to start reducing our waste.
That's right. I don't move and eat anymore, so
yeah.
It helps.
I started living my days in my bed.
An anti-movementarian. Yeah, no, it's a pretty depressing subject when you think about it, but you know that shouldn't be a barrier to trying to find solutions or find ways to mitigate.
Of course
the
not.
problem,
It should in fact be the opposite.
Yeah, it should be the driving factor.
That's right. We should be like.
But a lot of it, like so, we've talked about like this kind of lifestyle marketing and stuff like that. So I think
Hello.
And we're back after some technical difficulty.
So I regained consciousness and I was completely naked.
This is in Venezuela on the beach.
Oh wait, are we back?
We're back.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Okay. So, what were we talking about?
So I was heading on some point and we left off. I was bringing up the lifestyle angle and the emotional appeals again, and that kind of strategy for persuading people to change their attitudes about climate change and their own behavior and relations with the environment. And I'm thinking that another aspect to sort of changing the way people do things is just to model behavior, right? Like as you educate yourself and you figure out what works and what doesn't, what's stupid and what's smart in relation to how you interact with your environment, then you just start doing things in a better way. You start reducing your waste. You start making choices differently, and other people around you that you interact with see that. Like our friend Brittany, who is kind of influenced us with her zero waste lifestyle or whatever. She's influenced us to start making changes in what we consume and stuff. So you start like normalizing things, and that's how the culture changes, right? Through some like a virus, basically.
Right.
Yeah.
You know,
that makes sense.
Like a good virus.
Like a good virus, yeah.
Yeah, no, there are things that we can do to mitigate the damage, right? So it's taking steps like that zero waste program that you guys were talking about. It's doing, if you want to go to the extreme, eating less meat, less red meat.
Yeah, eating less meat at all. Or just less red meat, that has a big effect.
Yeah. Because cow farts are legitimately a leading cause.
Choosing public transportation if it's available to you. We've got a great new light rail system that's about to...
Shout out to the LRT. If the City of Ottawa would like to sponsor the podcast.
Or if you need a car, just buying a better car. A better, more fuel efficient
and keyword
kind of
there,
choice.
if you need a car.
If you need a car,
you may not need a car.
That's right.
Although, I mean, Ottawa does suck for transportation, public transportation, but, trying to improve things.
There are things we can do.
I mean, it's incredible. Like so the population is growing, right? And at the same time, energy consumption grows with the population, right? Mm-hmm. But also, per the individual, to some extent, energy consumption can be reduced,
right?
And is reduced, and you can sort of flatline that, right? You can compensate in an opposite direction. Mm-hmm. Like whereas we used to have our house full of like incandescent bulbs and stuff like that. Now a lot of us have like just LED lights and stuff that use just a fraction of the energy that used to just to light your place. Mm-hmm. So, I don't think it's a hopeless affair there.
Right. No, for sure.
Well, I mean, I guess we shouldn't even be considering whether there's hope or no hope. We're just...
Right. That's true, too. We know the long-term thinking thing doesn't work for most people. Mm-hmm. So it's better just to appeal to what you can do right now just to be a smarter actor.
Right. Well, I think on that note, it'd be a good place to leave off before we fucking crash again. So yeah, any parting words on the issue of climate change denial in general?
Well, we need to be changing our mind frames and working on ourselves, I guess, is what we've concluded in terms of this podcast and what we'd like to do, sort of thing. I don't know. Mm-hmm. So I'm looking at being vegetarian, it seems, these days. Kind of happen naturally.
Make energy and environmental irresponsibility uncool.
Mm-hmm.
Right, and make it sexy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like the way we addressed littering back in the 80s and 90s.
Yeah.
Littering is no longer an issue for the most part. It's not,
most people don't do it.
Yeah, exactly.
Around.
Yeah. So if we take that approach and just marginalize people who deny climate change or make them look like the idiots.
Yeah, I like some of these like instant karma kind of videos on YouTube or whatever where some guy's dash cam will catch the car ahead of him just throwing all of its junk out the window, and the guy actually stops his car, gets out, picks up the trash, and presents it to the person in the car ahead of him again.
Someone was just killed in the States for presenting a cigarette butt to someone that they threw out the window.
Really, the guy shot him?
I think, yeah.
Well, his plate's on video, so that guy's going to jail for life. Like morons are gonna moron, right?
Morons will moron. Could that be one of our T-shirts?
Yeah.
Critical Junction, morons will moron.
Yeah. I think we've run the gamut.
Yeah.
Any parting words?
Well, I mean, in terms of reframing our minds and stuff, I would suggest that the more we're able to identify with the external world and the external environment and stuff like that, and I'm trying to make this sexy here, the happier we will be, right?
Yeah.
The more we can take it all in and accept that we are this, that we're seeing and feeling and touching and loving, like that's us. The world is us, you know what I mean? Like, the more we can do this, the better. So feel the love, peoples. Feel the loves.
And by the way, charity feels good. I don't mean charity like giving money necessarily. I mean like charity on an ideological, argumentative level. It feels good not to poison the well and always assume that everyone's got an angle, you know. And
it feels good to notice things. It feels good to pay attention. You know.
Yeah.
Being mindful, general, notice things and don't deny them. People, you know.
And
these things are happening.
These things are happening.
This world. This is the real world here. The other stuff we're thinking isn't real. You know. This is the real shit.
And like I said earlier, what if we end up creating a better world for nothing?
I love it.
Oh my god.
We did it all. We saved the world for nothing. I love that idea.
On that note, this has been Critical Junction episode 22. I'm Mark.
I'm Mark, Gilles, and Luke.
Wow, you're a lot of people.
I am.
Save the trees, guys.
Save the trees.
For the Lorax, everyone.
As always, thanks for listening, and we'll catch you again next time.